everyone. William here. I just had another great conversation with another guest. Would you like to come in and listen in on the conversation we had? By the way, feel free to share it with anyone you feel may find it of interest. Come on, let's go listen in now. Sarah Warry-Poljanski.
Yeah.
It's great to have you back in the studio. I got your name correct this time as well. So, you reached out and you had a couple of topics that were near and dear to you as a trustee of potential trustee of Ward 7. And
mostly as a parent as well.
Yeah, very good. True enough. So what are some of the things that you wanted to discuss today? As the school year is finishing up, a lot of what's called the ARC procedures are coming to an end, and we're seeing a lot of school closures happening. 3 particularly in my area. Both of my children attend schools that are now closing, and there's various ones throughout the city, also throughout the whole province, which is kind of affecting families as well. And so I kind of want to touch base. I've been trying to send stuff as well to people within the city about what can we do as a community to stop this from happening and utilizing things more so that this doesn't have to affect us as much as it has. So I guess what you're saying is, how will keeping the schools open be more beneficial than closing them?
Yes.
Okay, so what are some of the things that would benefit the community?
I've been doing a lot of research and reading papers that within Ontario, Canada, but things also coming out of Harvard, various schools, universities in the States, but also throughout Europe and even in Australia. And what they're doing is using community schools as what they call hubs. And it's community partnerships, community involvement. So what they're doing is taking the local schools and they're putting agencies within the city that the community uses and bringing them into the school. So it's more accessible, and it also helps the community to become stronger and better. And with the closures and underutilization, I think if this is something we can start to do within the city of Hamilton, it can benefit us not only to keep the schools open, but get the community more involved, provide more services to them, and enrich everybody to kind of be better.
So are you referring to things like maximizing the use of the space when it's not being used for education?
Yes.
And having those people, like a small business or whatever, someone like myself maybe wanting to use a space to do some recording, and I could pay X amount of dollars to use that space, those kind of things, or a gym being used for a lecture rather than a hotel or something like that sort of thing?
Exactly, and those kind of things. And you know what I mean, we could kind of get where there would be obviously a small fee could be paid, or some kind of like exchange of goods and services, and people could use them after school. Some of them within the school during school hours would be things such as like daycares, which we already have, but we could expand on it, but also like your early years, your like new mom kind of courses, things that they could bring the children into the schools and kind of get them familiar with the schools in their community prior to kindergarten. So we can take these agencies and bring them within the schools so that they're being used and people are getting like the maximum benefit out of them. I'm just sitting here thinking possibly something like the art crawl could take up a space like that. So a gymnasium could be used as a gallery for the community to go in, and people outside the community to draw people from the community to come in and go through the gymnasium and look at this, and I'm sure people would volunteer their time to set things up. That's one of the great things about Hamilton. I noticed that there's a lot of people who are willing to volunteer their time, even if they may not have the capital. They have the time. They're willing to dig in, and someone like yourself who is so involved. I've met so many people who are wanting to get involved in the community with $0 in mind, just the betterment of the community. And it's great and refreshing to hear. Tell me more about your thoughts on the schools. Well, exactly. That's what we could do. Is we have like several schools now where have been investing money into recording studios, and like you said, like someone like yourself could come in and after hours use them, and just those spaces are available, and I think we should be using them more. But even within the school hours, with the just community involvement part, is bringing in people who want to volunteer, bringing in people maybe who are retired or who are in between jobs or at home to come in and help out the teachers, for instance, and help with, say, reading or upgrading math skills, because we see a lot of children now after school are attending the kind of after school programs that helped build on their skills if they're not as successful. And a lot of parents really can't afford it right now. So I think that's something we could do if we can bring more of these into the school with volunteers as well. It can help the community because it's not going to hurt their pockets as much. And if we invest that time into the students now, the outcome is going to be better than them not having those skills once they leave school. If they have more education, they'll require like little help after to get a job. And that's a thing we should focus on as well, is whatever we can provide to them today, it can help them be stronger in the future. So we should be doing whatever we can and utilizing that space, because if it's open, that's a perfect opportunity to kind of turn something negative into a positive.
Every plan needs an action plan. And is it something that you've kind of set up? Have you set up something that you could create as a proposal, as an action plan with a group of people, so you could present this to council or present it to the province as this is something that could be utilized?
I have sent one to the city and they looked at it, and it's a lot of it, there's fine print because it comes down to the financing and how much money the city has and the board and them cooperating together, and also like laws and bylaws and stuff the province sets. But this is something I do want to continue looking into, even after, if not elected. That way it does help out the community, because this is something, as the more I read and see how beneficial it is, I'm like, why aren't we doing this now? So I'm going to continue looking. I'm getting people kind of more interested in it. There are other people within the city I know that have also looked into this as well. So it's going to be networking and getting us all together, because we kind of live in that age of technology where everything's online and we're talking. So it's going to be bringing us in person together and kind of going over each other's notes and seeing what can we do to make this happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it evolves.
Hopefully. It could be something great, like I said, because the more we can get the community involved, taking care of each other, enriching each other's lives, utilizing the space, because that's the other thing, it's environmentally friendly. Instead of having new businesses start building and taking more green space, if we have the space for them to use now, it'd be awesome.
I believe that, it's been my experience anyway, that people will engage when it becomes important to them. If it's not important to them, or they don't understand how not doing something will affect them. And you said earlier about educating people, which is very important for those kind of things. Once people realize how it affects them, and how do you create a sense of importance in the minds of the people can affect change? Typically, you can only you'll only affect change if you're affected by not doing it, right? So how would you propose to get those people to understand that with this kind of change, these closing of the schools and not doing this, is important to you? Even the person standing behind the counter at City Hall, who needs to understand the importance of getting it done. So now it becomes, we can't dedicate thousands of hours to something like this as an individual, but collectively it can be done. So in what way can you see creating an awareness with people so that they understand the importance of what it is that you're trying to accomplish?
Well, I think the most part of it is if you understand what's called synergy, where a group of people working together is always going to be stronger than one person acting alone. So what we see even with finances, anything, you have to realize there's always a domino effect. What happens to one person, it will eventually, down the line, affect everyone else. So if we kind of start educating people with how this does involve them, because even with the school closures, when I talk to people and they say, well, I don't have school-age children, I don't think it affects me, I would say, well, you pay taxes. You're paying for these services. Would you prefer to be more involved and know what's happening? Would you prefer that they're being utilized well and not being wasted? And they're like, well, yeah, of course, if it's my money. So it's going to be educating people that the more we enrich the lives of others, it will directly affect us in that sense. And it's just, like you said, the education part and getting out and showing people like what this can do. Because like we said, like if someone's, say, a doctor, So everybody plays their part in society, and the better they can play it, the more whole we'll all be.
Okay.
So the more I can provide a better service to you, you can provide a better service to someone else, things will run more smoothly, and hopefully we'll have less problems. Also, with having things more convenient, readily available, people can access it easily. They won't have to, say, an after-school program. They won't have to leave their jobs. Like, for instance, I can say, personally, my son attended speech, and it was inside of one of the schools, and it was something like this now, where they utilize the schools after hours. When my daughter attended speech, I would have to leave work, I would have to pull her out of school, so that was several hours we were both missing. So financially, and for her education-wise, it was kind of balancing, kind of, okay, the pros and cons, where now, where they're placed in the schools after hours, I don't have to leave work, my son doesn't have to leave his education, and so it's perfect. So those kind of things, it really, when you first look at it, after a while you notice the benefits, and then you realize that this is pretty good.
Well, it'd be interesting to see how this progresses for you, and the steps that you take, and how you can get collectively the community together to kind of rally, as it were, behind a project, and maybe fine-tune it. There are probably things that aren't thought of yet that people who do get involved can fine-tune and make it more presentable and more palatable, right?
And that's the greatness. Like I said, like, everybody has their own special skills, their own special talents. So the more people that become involved and give their perspective, the more it can be fine-tuned. The more, if we have people from within the community saying, hey, this is something, you know, that I would like to do, but I find it hard to access. Is this something that we can put into these plans as well? The more community involvement and feedback that people provide, the better the services will be utilized, because we know we're hitting the target people that would use these, and it's not going to go to waste, and it's not going to waste money or time, or, like you said, when you go to the city and they say, who's going to use this, we're going to put the money into it. If we have the people that say, I'm going to, and this will benefit me, and by doing these things, it could help prevent these things over here from happening to me, we'll see that things can dramatically become better within society.
So if someone who wanted to get involved, how would they get in contact with you, or the group of people that you're assembling to present this? How would they get in touch with you?
Right now, mainly, you could email me, because like I said, this is in the very, very, very beginning stages. It's kind of like, if you think of a business plan, it's went through my mind, and it's starting to get onto paper, and the picture's starting to be drawn.
So you have the concept, now you need to put the plan together.
Exactly.
Very good. So, and what email would they use?
My email is sarahwpoljanski @gmail.com. So sarahwpoljanski @gmail.com.
Okay, I'll make sure I put it up at the end, so that and leave it long enough.
Oh, it's very long. So.
Yeah, but that's fine. All right. Well, terrific. Thanks again for coming out. I always enjoy getting together with you, Sarah, and I look forward to watching it grow. Please reach out again when you have some more content, or when you feel the time is right.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Sarah, so before you left, we had a couple of things that we missed talking about, so I'd like to actually take a moment and draw them back into this conversation before you leave, because I know the points were important, and I neglected to ask you if there was anything else that you want to talk to. Being a poor host, I apologize, but what are the topics that you have that you're working on?
One of my things too, because of my background coming when I worked with children and youth, was we've seen a real decline in extracurricular activities and kind of school involvement, and there are still some, like, I'm not saying it's totally gone away, but when I think back to, as a child, what we had and what there is now, and we kind of correlate like what children are doing, I think a lot of, with the community partnerships, community involvement, if we did a lot of more child and youth development through extracurricular
It's hard. Extracurricular
activities, we could maybe stop seeing, because we know childhood obesity is at an alarming rate. We know that with technology, a lot of kids are sitting at home in front of computers or video games. And I think if we brought in more sports and more things to attract children and youth to become more active, we could help them both intellectually, physically, emotionally, and just support them as a whole. And we can do that. For instance, we have professional sports teams within the city. If we could have them maybe partnership come in every once in a while and do a program, or even just stop by while someone else is doing a program, have parents come in, because very diverse community we live in. We have, like you've mentioned with the arts crawl, we have lots of artists, musicians, we have professionals and business people. And I think if we brought these people into the schools more and taught kids about their different professions and did maybe after school activities with them, for instance, in Ontario, we know the good things grow in Ontario. We have lots of farmers and nurseries. If they came in and say did after school programming or even lunchtime programming, or implementing some kind of programming within the existing curriculum about food and nutrition and the environment, and maybe came in and taught them more about farming and growing and plants and nature, that this could benefit us as a whole. And when we look at that, the benefit as well to these people are, if you're teaching children about this and they go home and they're like, oh, today these people came in, it could help them build business as well. So it's kind of give and receive.
Yeah, another education thing like you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the more people that come into the schools as well and help the children and youth and teach them something, they can also bring that home and maybe teach their parents maybe something that they didn't know, and their parents would become more interested and then become involved inside of it as well.
So create more dialogue at home.
More dialogue at home and getting more people involved in with, say, the after school activities. If parents came in and helped, and it would help them through their own physical well-being as well. So it's kind of giving everybody something to build on. And if we have kids becoming more active and involved in sport and just all these little things, it could keep them off the streets. We can keep them away from drugs. We can keep them away from those things that we know cause problems within the family, within society, and that could lead to destructive paths down the line. So it's kind of putting the focus on them and helping them learn better ways to find themselves without the use of drugs and alcohol, and having them fill those kind of voids and needs with people from within the community who can help them. I'm not saying that these people would become like responsible for them, but to provide kind of a role model.
Or at least enrich their lives through their own experiences.
Yes, and that's the other thing too, is we know when we look at different studies that a lot of children, like even grown adults, you learn more by doing something opposed to just reading or hearing about it. And the more hands-on we can provide to them, the better they'll become at stuff. And if we provide them with many options, they'll be able to think about stuff and kind of do more with their lives.
Is there other things that you had in mind?
Just also with the child and the youth and development, before we touched on like with the early years programs and keeping those within our communities, but there's also like right now we find a lot of parents are stressed. There's a lot going on. It's not like when I grew up, my mom was a stay-at-home mom and my father worked full-time, and so I could go home for lunch and she was there to come volunteer. That was the other thing I'm concerned with the school closures, is children not being able to go home for lunch, the parents not be able to walk to the school and volunteer. So if we can keep these things within the community, that can also help enrich. Children will be able to spend more time with their parents if they're able to, because it's just a walk across the street or a walk around the block, whatnot. So that was another thing I think we should really consider as well, is having that availability to parents to be able to help within the school more, and that relationship between, I think, school staff and parents, if we could better that way everybody's on the same page, and start maybe new programming that parents are more aware of the curriculum and they're able to help the children at home and kind of like I said before when I said the holistic approach to making sure everybody's involved in the lives of the children. Because I see a lot of people, we tend to sometimes become so busy within our lives, and we think the schools are more of just, well, it's the teacher's responsibility to teach my child, and that's that. And I think if we become more involved and we all try to help, we can kind of contribute more and get more out of it if we see that we aren't just responsible for one thing, but the overall health.
One thing affects another and another.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Well, it's great to have people like yourself who are committed to the community. And this city has so many people like yourself. You're not alone, possibly not the support that you require for the mission that you're on. But there are people who have so many different missions that they're on for the betterment of the city, and I truly enjoy having conversations with them. Like I said, I've been here for 2 years, and I've met people who are so committed to the community, and you being one of them, and it's just a great pleasure to be able to give you an opportunity to have some forum where you can articulate the things that you're trying to accomplish here, and I certainly hope you get the support that you need and wish you the best in your quest. And like I said earlier, I'm going to enjoy following it.
Thank you.
Thanks again for coming in, Sarah.
Thank you for allowing me this opportunity.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Join us. Catch the bug.